Hi, before we get started, just want to let you know that today's episode was brought to you by my good friend Stephen Hill, who donated the book that we're going to be reviewing. Now, if you'd like to help out the channel, head over to the About section. There's a list of prayer books that are still needed for the channel to review. I usually say I don't accept cash donations, but I'm giving serious consideration to setting up a Patreon, just so I can maybe upgrade my equipment and get a head start on some more books. Anyway, prayerfully consider. And without further ado, let's get to the review. Hello again and welcome back to Orthodox Review, where we review Orthodox prayer books, psalters, Bibles, texts, liturgical, and otherwise. Today we've got the Ancient Faith prayer book from Ancient Faith Ministries, or Ancient Faith Press, if you prefer. There are two versions of this. There is the standard softback, and then there is a deluxe leather soft version that I've yet to put my hands on, but as soon as I do, I'll give you a quick breakdown of that one. But for now, we have the OG. Now, of course, for the pertinent publication information, this was originally published in 2014, compiled by Father Vasilios Papavassiliou. The translation is what I would like to call, and maybe I'm coining a term here, new traditional. Reason being, the text reads not quite like modern English, but not quite like Victorian or Elizabethan, even though it has elements of all of those things. What I've noticed about the text is that even though it borrows its structure from Elizabethan and Victorian, what we would call traditional English translations, and just kind of switches a few things around so that it sounds a little more modern. Instead of thee and thou, you have you and your, but outside of that, it reads classically. So we're going to go ahead and call this new traditional. The retail price on this, I think, is about $20, maybe less. That was the one thing that I forgot to look at before I started the video. But anyway, the construction, obviously, like most paperbacks, is just glue binding, but it is pretty sturdy. This copy was recently given to me for the show. I had a copy many years ago, and like so much of my collection, I should say, it was given to a friend. And I've given away more books than I own. I'll tell you that much. But it's, glory to God, they get to use these prayer books. Anyway, so it's easy to read. It's not too modern. It flows very easily. As you can see, the spacing is nice. Lettering is clear. It's a good font. Very readable. The Psalms contained herein are of his own translation. And I would say that although they're jarring at first, if you're used to reading Psalms liturgically, that is, but the translation here is quite pleasant. Maybe not quite as poetic as some of the other translations we've gone through thus far, but as you can see here, it reads very easily. The Lord is my shepherd, and I shall lack nothing. He has made me to dwell in green pastures, beside the waters of rest he has nourished me. He has brought back my soul. He has led me on the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. For though I should walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff have comforted me. You have prepared a table before me in the presence of all those who afflict me. You have anointed my head with oil. Your cup inebriates me. Your mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And of course, one thing that I love looking at in Psalm translations is that line, you have anointed my head with oil and your cup inebriates me. There is so much contention over the translation of that line that it's one that I always like to go through in prayer books and psalters, because it's just, I don't know, it's one of my geeky little things that I like to look at. Now, of note, we have a few really cool little things in here. For starters, in the post-communion prayers, in addition to the three that you usually see, that being for St. John Chrysostom, St. Basil the Great, and for the pre-sanctified liturgy of St. Gregory, you also have the post-communion prayer for the liturgy of St. James. And this is the first time I have seen this prayer in a, for lack of a better term, mass-marketed prayer book. All the big ones that we all know, like Holy Transfiguration and Jordanville and St. Tikhon's, they don't have this prayer. And as far as I know, the only major community using this prayer either would be the monks at Newskeet, who celebrate the liturgy of St. James on a regular basis, or maybe possibly some Western Rite churches here and there. So just for this prayer alone, I think it's really cool. That's just, I don't know, I love little gems like that. One of the other things we have, we're going to go back a couple pages here, is the second instance, though the first that I'd seen in print, though the second in the show is back here, before using the internet. Now this isn't a long drawn out prayer, but it's a good catch-all. Be the helper of my soul, O God, for I walk in the midst of many snares. What more could you possibly say about the internet? Deliver me from them and save me, for you are good and you love mankind. Sweet, simple, to the point, and it really encapsulates the struggle that we all deal with these little black mirrors we hold in our hands and computers we sit on all day. We're inundated with depravity and degeneracy and pornography and all sorts of godless things. So that's a neat little one to have in there. And then finally, we have Prayers of the Saints, which actually draws from both Western and Eastern saints. Western saints, of course, either being from before the schism, or even in one case, a newly glorified Western saint. So you have prayers St. Aidan of Lindisfarne, Ambrose of Milan, St. Augustine of Hippo, quite a few in there from him. The breastplate of St. Patrick. I mean, that's poetry. That's beautiful. And it's not a bad translation. Again, all the translations in this book are not always the most poetic, but they are, for all intents and purposes, accurate and easy to read. St. Gregory of Nyssa, St. Dimitri of Rostov. Where is it? St. Gregory, we're getting close. The 24-hour prayers of St. John Chrysostom. Where is it? They're going to have to change this one, folks, because for those of you that don't know, a couple weeks ago from the time of this recording, Elder Sophronia of Essex was glorified in the church. He is now Saint Sophronia of Essex, a modern elder who, if you're not familiar with his life and works, worth digging into. I wholeheartedly recommend that. And then, of course, the great modern saint, St. Nikolai Velimirovich. And it's just like this little treasure trove of random prayers. And honestly, I dig it because even though I don't necessarily use those prayers all that often, it's nice to know that they're there, and it's nice to discover these. Because one thing you'll notice about most prayer books is they all pretty much contain the same thing with they're all variations on a theme, slight differences in translation. Whereas here, much like in the new St. Tikhon's book, you have a little more depth of prayer, digging into the corpus of the saints, so to speak. So that's, a little prayer book that's a great way to start your journey in the faith. It's very simple and easy to use. I'd say it's well worth the money. Now, the video after this, of course, will be going over the Ancient Faith Prayer Book, and the Psalms are different in that, though and just to tease the next video, personally think that the translation may actually be by the same person or persons. So stay tuned for that one. It'll be coming in a couple days. But for now, Ancient Faith Prayer Book, 1.5 thumbs up. It's a solid buy. If it falls apart, they're not too expensive, so you could always buy another one. But the one I had for several years, and I used it quite often, and it held up just fine. Also, the texture of the cover, it's a faux leather, so it's got a good texture to it. Anyway, that's enough rambling out of me. If you have any questions or comments about the book, hit me up in the comments below. If you want to help the show, go to the About section. There's plenty of information there. And if you want to purchase the book, I'm going to leave a link down there for you too. As always, go to church, say your prayers, and remember God. God bless. Wow, you made it to the end of the video. Who does that? Anybody? Let me know.